At 3 in the morning, I slid the divorce papers across the table to Liam Thorne myself. Is this about me sleeping with someone last night? He swirled the whiskey in his glass, the collar of his shirt still clinging to the scent of perfume that wasn't mine. Evelyn. You do know how things work in our circle, don't you? Beneath the crystal chandelier, I slowly rubbed away the faint indent of my wedding ring on my ring finger. I know. I just think you're disgusting. Fine. He leaned in, the smell of smoke and liquor washing over me. Then you go explain yourself to both our grandfathers. And make sure you cry pretty. We just signed a $3 billion joint development deal for the Southside project. 3 years of a strategic marriage. 3 generations of family ties. Every business section had crunched the numbers on the commercial value of our union. He was betting I'd never risk the family's interests over this. He had no idea I'd leaked the hotel security footage on purpose, while he was tangled up with someone else in that hotel room. My legal team was at the notary's office sealing evidence of his embezzlement of marital assets. By the time he curled up with his new fling to sleep off the night, the Hart family had already fully stripped Thorne Corp of its core technology. From now on, I make the rules in this business world. You bet I wouldn't flip the table. Don't blame me for not holding back. When I pushed the divorce papers toward Liam Thorne, he was leisurely adjusting his cufflinks. Dusk hung heavy outside the window. The conference room's crystal chandelier caught the lipstick stain on his shirt collar, making it burn like a brand. Sign it. Liam's gaze flicked over the document's title, and he suddenly laughed. Evelyn Hart, how many times have you thrown this divorce tantrum? He leaned back in his chair, relaxed as if watching an over-rehearsed play. 3rd time. 5th. He twirled a fountain pen between his fingers. What? Still not used to it. I lifted my eyes, my voice steady. Getting used to it doesn't mean I don't find you repulsive. The antique clock on the wall struck 6. My patience is wearing thin. I tapped the table once. Sign. He finally set down the pen, lacing his fingers together. That familiar smug smirk tugged at his lips. Fine. If you want a divorce, go talk to both our grandfathers yourself. He reeled off the list like he was ordering off a menu. Southside Harbor, Westside Tech Park, the cross-border logistics chain. Mess with any of them, and you tank the Hart family's foundation. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. Come on, Evie, stop being ridiculous. Everyone in this circle lives this way. Turn a blind eye, and life's easy. I don't care how other people live. My reflection stared back from the glass, utterly calm. I pushed the papers another inch forward. Last chance, sign it, or I'll sign for you. He stared at me for a long beat, then burst out laughing. Fine. He uncapped the pen, hovering the tip just above the page. Don't come crying when you regret this. Evelyn. Right before he put pen to paper, he glanced up and added, and when both our families come knocking, you get on your knees and clean up the mess yourself. I stared at that garish rose-pink lipstick stain on his collar, a cold smile curving my heart. Regret. A man who cheats like it's breathing and uses marriage as a fig leaf. I couldn't stand to look at him for another second. If our family's interests weren't so deeply intertwined, maybe I never would have married him in the first place. I'd barely pressed the elevator button when my phone screen lit up. It was a picture message from an unknown number. In the photo, Nia Moore, the rising star who'd gone into the hotel with Liam last night, was curled up on the suite's couch, wearing an oversized men's dress shirt, that Italian brand Liam always wore. The caption dripped with fake sweetness. Hey, Evie, Liam said I take way better care of him than you do last night. He says you're always so stuck up and proper. It's exhausting. I stared at the screen, and suddenly I smiled. The elevator doors slid open. I stepped inside, and caught my reflection in the mirrored walls. The curve of my smile was cold, sharp as light glinting off a blade. I called my executive assistant, my voice so steady it held no trace of emotion. Dig up every resource that new friend of his has room 2307 at the Grand Peninsula last night. Ms. Hart. She's a new talent Starlet Entertainment's been pushing hard. She's got 1 streaming series, 2 skincare endorsements, and she's filming Star Spotlight the day after tomorrow. Cut all of it. The elevator descended, the numbers ticking down. I straightened the fringe of my cashmere shawl in the mirror and went on. Tell all our partners, Hart Group will never invest in any project tied to her. ever again, for contracts already signed. I'll pay double the breach penalty. There was a pause on the other end. Ms. Hart, she's backed by the Warren family. The Warrens. I chuckled softly. Then tell Mrs. Warren this. Her husband gambled away $30 million in Melbourne last month. And he used their joint marital assets as collateral. If she wants to hold on to whatever savings she has left, she'll know which side to pick. The elevator reached the underground parking garage. I walked toward my car, the night wind lifting the hem of my dress, but the anger still burned in my chest. It wasn't enough, not nearly enough. A leech like her, climbing up on a man's coattails and daring to flaunt it in my face. Ruining her career was letting her off too easy. Before I pulled open the car door, I sent another message. No greeting, no signature, just an address and a room number. Grand Peninsula. 2307. Now. The reply came instantly. Understood. The car pulled out of the garage and merged into the midnight traffic. 5 minutes later, my phone buzzed. This time it was a 10-second video, in the hotel back alley. The starlet who'd been taking selfies in a man's shirt an hour ago was curled up by a dumpster. Her face was clean enough, but her brand new designer dress was ripped from shoulder to waist, and her carefully curled hair was matted with something unidentifiable. When the camera zoomed in, she scrambled to cover her face. A fresh red mark blazed on her wrist, not deep, but bad enough that she wouldn't be wearing short sleeves for 2 weeks. The note under the video read, "Don't worry, Ms. Hart. The doctor checked all superficial, but she won't be sending any picture messages for the next 3 months. That's for sure." I stared at the screen and finally exhaled. I called my internal line. I want to see Starlit Entertainment's stock hit the limit down tomorrow morning. Understood. Also, Mr. Thorne called earlier. He was asking. Block all his numbers. I rolled down the window, letting the night wind flood in, and tell the hotel burn that shirt from room 2307. Incinerate it. What should I tell them is the reason? I leaned back into the leather seat and closed my eyes. It's dirty. I woke up after a short nap. Dusk was already falling beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand. The second the screen lit up, the top notification was a new post from Nia Moore. First time on a private jet. Thank you to someone special for taking me to see the sea of clouds at 4 a.m. Some views really only open up when you're high enough. The photo showed roiling clouds outside the plane window, and a man's wrist resting on the leather armrest, a Patek Philippe celestial watch, and beneath the strap, half of a scar I knew all too well. Liam had gotten that scar saving me 3 years ago. Someone commented, "Is that Mr. Thorne?" She replied with a shy emoji. Almost at the same time, my phone buzzed again. A message from Liam popped up. Saw the trending topic. The media's making stuff up. Her agency needs the buzz. I just lent a hand. You made quite a scene last night. I had to smooth things over with her. Be understanding. Yeah. I stared at those words for a long time, and suddenly it all felt absurd. So for some people, lending a hand means flying another woman up to the stratosphere at 4 a.m. to watch the clouds, and being understanding means I'm supposed to swallow a fly and smile and say thank you. My finger hovered over the screen. I opened the chat window I'd used for 7 years. The wallpaper was a photo he'd snuck of me on our engagement day, laughing in the garden in a white dress, bright and alive. He'd never changed it. All these years. I hit delete, not block, permanently delete. 20 minutes later, I went downstairs. My father was in the dining room watching the evening news. He heard my footsteps and looked up, frowning immediately. Why are your eyes swollen? Didn't sleep well. I sat down, and the maid brought over a bowl of warmed bird's nest soup. My father set down the remote, his voice deepening. Is that Thorne boy at it again? No. I scooped up a spoonful of soup, the steam blurring my vision. I just realized some things. That's all. The business news was on, and it just so happened to be covering Thorne Corp's new project signing ceremony. The camera panned over the audience. Liam sat in the front row in a crisp suit. An empty seat beside him, the seat that had always been mine. Now it was occupied by that starlet, Nia. My father followed my gaze, and his face darkened instantly. He was about to speak, but I set down my spoon first. Dad. I met his eyes. I redid the proposal for the Southside New Energy Industrial Park project. My father froze. Thorn Corp's plan is too conservative. And their tech roadmap is flawed. I pulled my tablet out of my bag and pulled up the file. I want to take on the project independently, with my own team. The screen was packed with data analysis, the product of 3 months of late nights. My father took the tablet, swiping quickly through the pages. His expression shifted from surprise to gravity, finally settling on a complicated sort of pride. But Evie, he looked up. This project was supposed to be a joint venture. If you go it alone, you'll be going head-to-head with Thorn Corp. And besides, he trailed off. Have you and Liam been fighting? Isn't this a little extreme? Business is business. Marriage is marriage. My voice was steady. He can take someone else to see the clouds at 4 a.m. I can steal his most important project at 9 a.m. That's only fair, isn't it? My father stared at me for a long time, long enough that the news switched to the weather forecast, long enough that the steam from my soup faded completely. Finally, he smiled, crinkles fanning out at the corners of his eyes. All right, whatever funding you need, go straight to the CFO. I'll assign you the best team we have. My phone rang right then. It was a party invite from my best friend, Sophia. The location was the most expensive rooftop bar on the riverfront. The note read, "Celebrating your newly single status. Drinks are on me tonight. We're that red dress weary gonna blow everyone away." My father glanced at the screen and waved a hand. Go on, have old Charlie drive you. Stay out as late as you want. Half an hour later, I pushed open the glass doors of Skyline Rooftop Bar. A hush of suppressed excitement rippled through the room. Crystal chandelier light scattered like crushed diamonds over the central booth. Liam lounged on the velvet sofa, and Nia the starlet who'd thanked someone special for the sea of clouds that morning was practically curled in his lap, filming a short video on her phone. Sunrise at 4 a.m. Bar hopping at 9 p.m. Sophia scoffed in my ear. Mr. Thorne certainly has stamina. We'd planned to steer clear, but Nia had already spotted us. Her eyes lit up with that sharp, performative defiance. She whispered something in Liam's ear, then sauntered to her feet and headed straight for the display cooler in the middle of the lounge. A waiter walked by just then with a tray. On it was that 1945 Romanée-Conti I kept stored here. Nia's nude polished hand landed on the bottle at the exact same time as mine. Hey, Evie. Her voice was cloyingly sweet. Liam promised to open this for me tonight. You don't mind, do you? A titter of laughter came from the socialites at the table behind her. Someone muttered just loud enough to be heard. Some people just can't face reality. The real deal's right here, and she's still acting like the wife. Nia's right. Love doesn't care who came first. The one who isn't loved, they're the third wheel. I let go of the bottle, watching the triumphant smile spread across Nia's face. Then, the second she turned away, I grabbed her wrist. What are you? She yelped. I said nothing. I just picked up the bottle, lifted my arm, and poured. Deep red wine cascaded over her head, soaking through her expensive silk dress in an instant. Her false eyelashes glued to her cheeks, her carefully styled curls matted into a mess. Dead silence. Then Nia's shrill, hysterical scream. Evelyn Hart, are you insane? Insane. I set the empty bottle back on the waiter's trembling tray and took a hot towel, wiping my hands slowly. I'm teaching you manners. First, I stepped forward, my voice clear and sharp. Steal men all you want, but don't touch what's in my wine locker. I picked every single bottle here. You're not worthy. Second, I smiled faintly at her disheveled state. If you're gonna be a parasite, act like one. Don't rush to the dinner table before the host's even dead. I lifted my hand and tilted her wet chin up. You'll choke. That's when Liam stormed over. He wrenched me away, shielding Nia behind him. His face was thunderous. Evelyn, have you had enough? His chest heaved. He pulled a Bulgari necklace out of his suit pocket, the velvet box half soaked with wine. This was supposed to make you happy tonight. Fury simmered in his voice, but he was still putting on that lovesick act. You had her beaten last night. You cut all her deals. And I let it slide, because I thought you still cared, that you were jealous. That you. I laughed out loud. I really did. Then I grabbed a glass of ice water from the table whoever had ordered it and threw it in his face. Water dripped down his stunned face. The necklace box clattered to the floor, rolling into a pile of crushed ice. Liam Thorne. I took the clutch Sophia handed me and slapped the neatly folded papers against his wet shirt. Final divorce papers. I signed them. My lawyer will be in touch tomorrow. I glanced at Nia, trembling behind him, and reached out not to hit her, but to brush a strand of wet hair off her face. The gesture was gentle, like petting an animal. Then I leaned in, my voice low enough that only the three of us could hear. I don't want this man anymore. He's all yours. Enjoy. I stepped back, a faint smile on my lips. After all, trash belongs in the dumpster. With that, I looped my arm through Sophia's and turned toward the door, my heels clicking sharply on the floor. Temper like that. Fiery. A low, amused murmur came from the shadows of a booth. Chandelier light glinted off Liam's profile as he slowly dabbed at his wine-soaked cuff. At the comment, he huffed a quiet laugh. I spoiled her. I deserve it. Then he turned around. The protective stance he'd had around Nia was gone completely. He reached out not to comfort her, but to hook his knuckle under her wet chin. His grip was firm, forcing her to tilt her face up, streaked with wine and tears. Got it. His voice was low, and it seemed to drop the temperature of the entire bar. Nia. His finger traced her trembling lip, the gesture almost tender, but his words were sharp as ice. The position of Mrs. Thorne. He pressed down slightly, the necklace clasp clicking softly. Only Evelyn Hart was ever worthy of it. And you. He let go, letting the necklace fall into the puddle of wine on the floor. You're not even worth the dust on her heel. He stood up and pulled out a silk handkerchief, wiping his fingertips slowly as if he'd touched something filthy. One intersection away from my riverfront apartment. I told Sophia to pull over. When I stepped out of the car, the early summer night wind hit me, thick with the damp scent of the river. Liam and I had walked this riverside path countless times. The first time we'd walked side by side here was the day after our engagement. I'd just officially joined Hart Group, and a handful of senior board members had ganged up on me. I'd stormed down to the river in tears. He'd followed, not asking a single question, just walked with me for 3 whole hours. When the first light of dawn broke, he suddenly stopped and pointed at the construction site across the river. Evie, see those scaffolding? His profile was sharp in the morning light. When that building tops out, I'll build you a glass greenhouse on the top floor. Next time you're upset, you can go up there, just sky, clouds, and the whole city at your feet. The first year of our marriage, I took on my first solo project. After 3 straight all-nighters, I passed out in the conference room from low blood sugar. I woke up in the hospital. He was asleep in a chair beside my bed, still clutching a half-finished report covered in red pen notes. The nurse said he'd stayed all night, fixed every mistake in my data, and refused to let anyone wake me. He woke the second I moved, his eyes bloodshot. The first thing he said was, "Evie, don't push yourself so hard next time. I've got you, always." Back then, his shoulders really could hold up my whole world. And that family trip to Iceland. I'd mentioned offhand that I wanted to see the northern lights, and he'd waited with me on the black sand beach for 4 freezing nights. On the 5th morning, when the green light finally spilled across the sky, he dropped to one knee in the -10-degree snow and pulled out a lopsided ring woven from grass. Our wedding was too rushed. I owe you a real proposal. His nose was bright red from the cold, but he was grinning like an idiot. Evelyn Hart, I'm booking you for this life, the next, and the one after that. The grass ring had long since disintegrated, but the warmth of his breath when he said it still felt like it was lingering by my ear. Sophia's voice pulled me back to the present. I remember. For your first anniversary, he rented out the entire aquarium, just because you said once as a kid that you wanted to sleep among the fish. She paused. You stood in that glass tunnel in a wedding dress, and a manta ray swam over your head. The way Liam looked at you, I'll never forget it. I remembered. He'd looked at me like I was the most precious thing in the world, and I'd believed him, until 6 months ago, when Liam Thorne's name started popping up constantly in the gossip pages. At first it was just vague rumors, lost among other high society gossip, unremarkable, like oil on water, until Nia Moore's name clung to his like a parasite, impossible to shake. She was Starlit Entertainment's golden girl. Pushed hard with endless funding, she'd blown up overnight thanks to a streaming series Thorn Corp had suddenly poured money into. Then she'd moved into a luxury riverfront apartment 1 block from Thorn Corp headquarters, a property owned by Liam. The first time I'd really paid attention to her name was at a business gala I couldn't skip. Liam was laughing and talking with colleagues, and she'd appeared like a vine, handing him a glass of warm water with practiced ease. Eyes flickered between the three of us, but she'd just lowered her lashes and said softly, "Mr. Thorne, you have a weak stomach, don't drink too much." In that moment, the way he looked at her held a soft, relaxed warmth I hadn't seen in a long time. I'd been stupid enough to think our marriage was different from all those other strategic high society unions where both parties played around. At the very least, we'd grown up together. We'd seen each other at our worst. I thought what we had, if not grand passion, was at least loyalty and unspoken understanding, until that sweltering afternoon, when Sophia burst into my office and slammed her phone down on my desk. On the screen was the familiar hallway carpet of the Grand Peninsula, the same place we'd spent our 3rd wedding anniversary. Security footage showed Liam swiping his key card for room 2307. A slender figure in his arms wearing that limited edition bucket hat Nia was always posting about. The timestamp burned bright, 2:17 a.m. The last message he'd sent me that night was, "Still at a work event, go to sleep first." So there really was no such thing as a secret that stayed buried. I brought the printed photos to Thorn Corp to confront him. He was in a video conference. When he saw the pictures scattered across his solid wood desk, his gaze flickered, and he waved his secretary out. When the door closed, he rubbed the space between his brows, his tone tired and matter-of-fact. "Evie, I thought you understood by now. This is just how things work in our circle, isn't it?" Beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, the whole city of Riverton glittered. He stood in that sea of light, his face both familiar and strange. "We both see other people. We don't interfere. We keep up appearances." He stepped closer, reaching for my shoulder. But I turned away. "Don't worry, you'll always be Mrs. Thorne. All that stuff out there, it's just meaningless fun." He said it so calmly, like betrayal wasn't betrayal, just an unspoken rule of adulthood. Like 20-something years of standing by each other, building an empire side by side. All those late nights sharing dreams and fears, none of it mattered. Just a throwaway, everyone does it. But I couldn't get past it. I just couldn't. I'd thrown my share of fits over Liam's blatant infidelities. I'd smashed the pair of antique vases he'd given me for our engagement. I'd cut all his shirts to rags. I'd thrown a cake in his face at our anniversary dinner in front of everyone. I'd said I'm done with this marriage 100 times, moved back home, pulled funding from joint projects. But in the quiet of the night, when I looked at that photo on my nightstand, 16-year-old us at the foot of the mountain, him carrying me with my broken leg, both of us grinning like idiots, my heart ached like it was being beaten with a blunt instrument. I'd tried to talk myself into it. I'd even gone to therapy. Learned all that standard marriage counseling advice. Give him space. Don't ask about his schedule. Ignore the perfume on his shirts. Sophia always said I was an idiot. Evelyn Hart, what are you even getting out of this? What was I getting out of it? The scar he'd gotten fighting for me when we were 5. The warm sliders he'd snuck over the wall to bring me at 15. The fire in his eyes at 25. When he'd stood up to the whole board and said I trust Evie, I was afraid of the pain. So every time we fought, I was the one who backed down. I'd happen to stop by his office with dinner. I'd drop off medicine when he had a cold. I'd cover for him in front of his parents. I told myself it was wisdom, maturity, the mark of a good wife in this circle, until the car crashed 3 months ago. It was raining. The brakes failed. The second the airbag deployed, the first number I dialed was his. Once, twice, 10 times. Nothing but dial tone. In the end, the firefighters pried the door open and pulled me out of the crumpled driver's seat. 17 stitches in the ER, a broken left leg. At 3 a.m., my phone finally rang. I answered with shaking hands, and heard his lazy, slurred voice. "Evie, what's up? It's so late." In the background, a woman's giggle, and Nia's clear voice. "Mr. Thorne, it's your turn." I was in a car crash. He paused, then said calmly, "Bad. I'll send my assistant over to handle it." Like he was talking about a document that needed signing. A nurse came in to change my dressing and asked softly, "Your family's still not here?" I shook my head and smiled. "It's fine, I've got this." That's when I learned that when your heart truly breaks, you don't even bother feeling sorry for yourself. I hung up and looked up. Plane tree leaves rustled in the wind, dappling light across my skin, and suddenly I realized. Letting go of someone doesn't happen in one big epiphany. It happens in a single moment when you realize the sun is still warm, the wind is still soft, even without him. The first workday of the next month, my lawyer personally delivered 2 documents to my office. Ms. Hart. All legal proceedings are finalized. Attorney Carter's voice was steady. You and Mr. Thorne are officially divorced as of today. That same Friday, Summit Capital hosted its annual business gala. As CEO of Hart Group, I had to be there for business. And for pride. Half of Riverton's financial elite would be in attendance. I just hadn't expected Liam to bring Nia his new close companion. The main table had reserved joint place cards for Thorne Corp Hart Group. I glanced right past them and walked straight to the adjacent head table. Sitting down calmly in the seat marked Independent Investor, Nia was in a couture gown, hanging on Liam's arm and laughing with a handful of producers. She clearly knew exactly how to milk every second of exposure at an event like this. When I came back from making the rounds, Liam was already sitting in the guest seat at my table, swirling a glass of champagne, still mad about last time. There was that knowing, faintly exasperated tone in his voice. "It's been a month, Evie. I was really drunk that night. You know how these work events go." I took a glass of water from a waiter and ignored the drink he pushed toward me. "Liam, we're divorced." My voice was steady, but it cut through the background music sharp and clear. "This isn't anger. It's a legal fact. You signed the papers. The court stamped them." He shook his head and laughed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. He even leaned in, lowering his voice. "Fine. We're divorced. So how long is this cooling off period gonna last? Give me a timeline. When can I win you back?" I didn't answer. I turned my gaze to the host giving a speech. Beneath the swirling chandelier light, a few familiar elders came over to toast. Mr. Warren clapped Liam on the shoulder and boomed, "Liam, when are you two gonna let us celebrate your first child? We've got our checks ready." Liam raised his glass smoothly, his hand resting lightly on the small of my back like the perfect husband. "Don't worry, Uncle Warren, soon." Mrs. Warren chimed in, smiling teasingly. "Ms. Moore's show is such a hit lately. Liam's always had a good eye for talent." She turned to me with that familiar, patronizing warmth. "Evie, you'd better hold on to him. A husband this successful. Girls are lining up." Liam preened at the flattery, his hand brushing Nia's shoulder lightly, but his eyes were on me, waiting for a reaction. He seemed to revel in being wanted by 2 women, one for status, one for obedience. I set down my crystal glass. The bass tapped the table with a sharp, clear sound. "Auntie Warren's right." I smiled at her, perfectly polite. "Mr. Thorne is very talented, great at business, and even better at propping up starlets. I hear Starlet Entertainment's prepping for an IPO, and Thorne Capital's the biggest investor." I paused, turning my gaze slowly to Nia. My tone as casual as if we were making small talk. "Your show Floating Light is the flagship project, right? Congratulations in advance, but..." I leaned forward slightly, lowering my voice so only our table could hear every word sharp as a blade. "The entertainment industry moves fast. Rely on a man, and you'll fall when he does, instead of figuring out how to be a pretty ornament for men to admire. Ms. Moore, ask yourself, what will you have left when this face isn't new anymore?" Nia's smile froze on her face. Liam dropped his hand from her shoulder, his gaze darkening. I ignored them both and turned to Uncle Lewis, who'd mentioned the baby celebration. I raised my glass with a bright smile. "Uncle Lewis, I'll have my assistant drop off the healthcare investment proposal you asked for tomorrow. As for other celebrations..." I glanced sidelong at Liam's suddenly sour expression and chuckled. "I'm afraid there won't be any of those for a while. I'm putting all my energy into building my own empire these days. Wouldn't you agree?" At the end of the gala, Liam cornered me in the hallway. He leaned against the wall, his diamond cufflinks glinting coldly in the dim light. That familiar arrogant, patronizing ease about him. Had your fun? His tone was indulgent. Like he held all the cards. You've gotten even with Nia. You taught her a lesson. Move back in next week, and we'll put this all behind us. I didn't turn around. My finger traced the cold glass wall, and his smug smirk in the reflection burned behind us. I laughed softly. Mr. Thorne, we're divorced. Do I need to slap the divorce decree in your face to remind you what ex-spouse means? He stepped closer. The scent of his cologne mixed with cloying women's perfume. Nia's. Evelyn Hart. Stop being childish. His voice dropped to a warning. I'm going to Singapore next month. I don't have time for your hard-to-get games. I turned around. My heels clicking sharply on the floor. Funny. I smiled. I'm signing the $10 billion Southside Industrial Park contract next month. I'll be living at the site for the next 6 months. If you want to talk business. Mr. Thorne, I glanced at my diamond watch. Make an appointment with my secretary. Nia chose that exact moment to appear with a plate of appetizers, timing her entrance like an actress. Liam, her voice was syrupy. But her eyes darted to me. My lease is up. Can I stay at the Cloudcrest penthouse for a bit? She paused deliberately, putting on a timid, innocent act. Just the smallest guest room. The one next to the master. Smack. I slapped her with all my strength. She slammed back into the wall. A crystal earring flew off, clattering across the polished floor. Dead silence. I shook out my stinging wrist, pulled a disinfectant wipe from my clutch, and cleaned my fingers one by one. First, the Cloudcrest penthouse is in my name now. I looked at Liam. Only has visiting rights, and only when I feel like granting them. Second, I stepped toward Nia, who was trembling and holding her face. I tilted her chin up, forcing her to look at me. That guest room next to the master. I designed it for my dog. Her pupils blew wide. Want to stay there? I let go and took a fresh glass of wine from a passing waiter, holding it up to the light. First, get your canine good citizen certification. Learn not to throw yourself at every man you see, not to wag your tail at someone else's husband. I splashed the wine at her feet, the dark red liquid staining her expensive shoes. Then ask me if your breed's good enough for my home. With that, I walked away without a second glance at either of them. 63 days after the divorce decree went into effect, my mother set a dinner party invitation on my desk. Saturday night, at the Chase residence. Her tone was as casual as if she were talking about the weekend menu. Their youngest son, Elijah, came back last month. You should meet him. For 2 months. Liam had been acting like a man possessed. First it was tiny diamond studs, then a limited edition ballerina music box I'd glanced at once in a magazine as a teen. Then he'd somehow dug up the first fountain pen I'd ever ruined at 16, put it in a velvet box, and had it delivered to my office. I told my assistant to send everything back. The next day, something even more expensive would show up. Sometimes, when he got too annoying, I'd sign for it absent-mindedly and donate it to the Women and Children's Foundation. The night of the Chase family dinner, Sophia was fastening the back of my dress. I stared at my reflection-perfect makeup, distant eyes, and suddenly asked, Sophia, do you think I'm moving too fast? Her fingers stilled. She glared at me through the mirror. Too fast. Evelyn Hart. Has all that garbage Liam's been sending addled your brain? He wasted 3 years of your life. You gonna let him waste the next 30? She pulled the belt tight, her voice sharp as tempered steel. That loser isn't even worthy of tying your shoes. Elijah Chase was even more handsome in person than he'd been in his profile photo. We talked about blockchain's impact on traditional finance, about Scandinavian minimalist architecture, about the Siamese cat he kept in his Cambridge apartment that kept stealing the neighbor's newspaper. He didn't pry into my past, didn't lay on the flattery. When I mentioned Hart Group's breakthrough in low-temperature battery performance, he just pushed his glasses up slightly and said, that paper in Nature Energy last month, that was your team, wasn't it? The data modeling in Section 3 was brilliant. In that moment, it hit me. I hadn't opened a single message from Liam in a whole week, even when that absurdly expensive solid gold sailboat model arrived that morning. I'd just glanced at the photo my assistant sent and replied, standard procedure. When the dinner ended, Elijah handed me my coat. Sotheby's has a private contemporary art viewing early next month. I have an invitation, if you'd be interested. The preview was on a Tuesday evening, when Elijah's driver picked me up. Fine rain was drifting down when we arrived. The gallery hummed with quiet conversation and the soft pop of champagne corks. Elijah was pointing to an early Zayawalki piece, murmuring about the Eastern sensibility in the brushstrokes. When my phone buzzed against my thigh in my clutch, it was Sophia. I excused myself and stepped behind a column to answer. Instead of her usual bright voice, she spoke quickly, barely containing her anger. Evie, are you at Sotheby's? Yeah, with Elijah. Why? What's wrong? Liam found out somehow about you and Elijah. He drove straight to the Chase family estate this afternoon, smashed the greenhouse windows, trampled all old Mr. Chase's prized orchids, and knocked over that mahogany screen in the foyer right in front of his parents. He's acting like a rabid dog. The Chases already filed a police report. I gripped my phone tighter, the cold metal digging into my palm. Were Elijah's parents hurt? They're fine. Just shaken up. But here's the thing, she paused, lowering her voice. When he left the Chases, he looked wrong. My people followed him for a bit. And he's heading toward Midtown. I'm scared he found out where you are. He's unhinged. He could do anything. I looked up. Through the gallery's spotless floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see the covered entrance below. A figure was striding across the driveway in the rain, ignoring the valet's protests and heading straight for the VIP elevator. He had no umbrella. His suit was dark with rain in patches. His hair stuck messily to his forehead, but his steps were reckless. Unhinged. It was Liam. I watched him storm through the gallery toward me, soaked to the bone and wildeed, and finished quietly. He's already here. Liam looked terrible. Bloodshot eyes, hair plastered to his forehead by rain. There was no trace left of the poised thorn corpair. Need a hand. Elijah stepped closer, his voice calm but his gaze sharp as he took in Liam. No, thank you, Mr. Chase. Please enjoy the rest of the viewing. I turned to Liam, my voice cold. If you have something to say, we can talk outside. With that, I walked straight for the side exit and the stairwell. It was quiet, empty, perfect for this mess. Elijah nodded slightly and handed me a business card. My bodyguards are right outside. Call if you need anything. I led Liam to a quiet VIP lounge on the ground floor of the Sotheby's building. The door closed, shutting out the art and glamour outside. He leaned against the wall like a trapped beast finally running out of strength, his chest heaving as he stared at me. Evie, his voice was rough. I deserve an explanation. His voice seemed to seep through cracks in ice, every word sharp and cold. I turned to face him, meeting his eyes across the dim lounge. So you finally got the divorce decree. I take it. My tone was as casual as if I were commenting on the weather. He stepped closer, anger and disbelief warring in his eyes. Is this because I missed our anniversary? Evelyn, this isn't even the first time. It's not the first time. You're right. I cut him off, even smiling faintly. Good memory. Disbelief flickered across his face, like my calm was harder to fathom than screaming in tears. You didn't actually think I forgave you for all those other times, did you? I stepped forward, forcing him back half a step. The perfume on your shirts, the footsteps coming home at 3 a.m., all those necessary work events. You thought I actually let it go. My voice was soft, but his pupils blew wide. I lifted my hand, tapping the air over his heart, kept a running tab, and when the tab was full, I dropped my hand. I settled up and left. His Adam's apple bobbed, like he was swallowing a bitter truth. Why, you into Elijah Chase now? Over a few stupid paintings. Elijah Chase. I laughed out loud. Liam, you've spent so much time with Nia. You're starting to throw tantrums just like her. I grabbed my clutch and headed for the door, but he grabbed my wrist, his grip tight enough to hurt. Evelyn. His voice was raw. A trapped animal's last stand. What do you want? A house. More shares. I sent Nia away. She's gone for good. We can start over. Liam. I cut him off, prying his fingers off my wrist one by one. Then I pulled a disinfectant wipe from my clutch and slowly cleaned the spot where he'd touched me. I never wanted you to give me anything. I dropped the used wipe into his frozen palm. I wanted you and all your cheap guilt and your pity favors. I looked up, meeting his eyes one last time, to get out of my life. For good. I picked up my clutch and walked for the door, but he grabbed my wrist again from behind, his grip like iron, his fingers were ice cold. Trembling almost imperceptibly, "It's just one mistake that every man makes." His voice was rough, each word scraping out of a dry throat. "I already promised to send Nia away. I'll never see her again. What more do you want from me, Evelyn?" I stopped walking. I didn't turn around. Or is it he spun me around to face him, his bloodshot eyes boring into mine? "You've been messing around with Elijah this whole time. You found your next guy, so you used this as an excuse to leave." I looked at the anger and hurt in his eyes. And that flicker of fear he didn't even know he felt, and suddenly it all felt absurd. "Liam." I pulled my hand back gently, pulled a sanitizer spray from my bag, and spritzed my wrist right in front of him. "How many years have we known each other?" He froze. 12 years. I answered for him. "From the warm sliders you snuck over the wall to bring me at 15, to holding another woman and watching the clouds on our anniversary at 27. I put the spray away and looked up at him. "In 12 years. You had a million chances to not mess up. You could have skipped the concert with Nia on my birthday. You could have not flown to Paris on a solo business trip for our anniversary. You could have not been out singing karaoke with another woman when I was in the hospital after a car crash." His face drained of color, inch by inch, but every single time, "You chose wrong." I stepped forward, holding his gaze. "And now you're telling me it's just one mistake every man makes." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Do you know when I finally decided to divorce you, Liam? It wasn't when you missed our anniversary. It wasn't those photos Nia sent in your shirt. It was the next night. I was in the ER, covered in blood. The 13th time I called you, you finally picked up. And in the background, Nia was singing 'Marry You,' and you said to me." I looked up at his ashen face and repeated his words, slow and clear. "Bad. I'll send my assistant over to handle it, Evie." I didn't know it was that bad. His voice shook, every word razor-edged. "If I'd known, I never would've." "You didn't know." "That's true." I cut him off softly, shaking my head, "because when the ambulance brought me in, you were in the middle of the chorus of Hiroshima Mon Amour with Nia." Funny, isn't it? I stared out the window, a cold smile tugging at my lips. I didn't cry when the car crashed. I didn't cry going through tests alone. I didn't even cry when the doctor said I might have permanent damage. But lying there in the ER, hearing you say bad, like it was nothing, suddenly it hurt. I turned to face him, meeting his pained gaze. Worse than breaking a bone. I thought back then. My voice was soft, like I was talking to myself. "When I broke my leg skiing at 17, you carried me 3 miles down the mountain. Your boots were full of ice by the time we got to the hospital, but you just smiled and said, 'Don't be scared, Evie.' You said you'd be there for me, no matter where, no matter when." I paused, glancing down at my left leg, the pale scar faint under the light. "These past 2 years, I kept blaming myself. Every time you came home late, every time there was strange perfume on your shirt, every anniversary you happened to be out of town. I wondered if I was being too sensitive, if this really was just how our circle worked, if I should learn to be more understanding. But after 3 days in that hospital bed," I looked up, calm and steady, into his bloodshot eyes. "I finally got it. It's not the circle. It's not Nia. It's not even the car crash. It's that boy who walked through snow for me. He died a long time ago. And the man you are now, answering the phone when I might be dying. That's just an inconvenience to your good time." Liam opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "So, you decided to divorce me the day of the crash?" "Yeah." I held his gaze steadily. "In those few minutes right after the anesthesia kicked in, before I passed out completely?" "No. I didn't know it was bad. I thought it was just a fender bender." "None of that matters now. We're divorced." Tears rolled down his cheeks, unbidden. "I don't want a divorce." His voice broke. "Evie, we don't have to do this." "Are you sure?" I pulled an ultrasound photo from my bag and slid it across to him. "Nia's pregnant. 8 weeks. I watched his face go completely white, my voice soft as a sigh. "See, your life can be whole without me. Go home." "Liam." We've been on different paths for a long time. Liam said nothing else. The hallway light sliced his shadow into pieces. Maybe it was on our anniversary. When I waited up alone until dawn and he was up in a private jet with Nia watching the clouds. Maybe it was when I had a 102-degree fever and went to the ER alone for an 4. And he was in the Grand Peninsula suite putting that diamond necklace on Nia, the one I'd stared at the auction. That's when it finally sank in. I was really gone. The crash hadn't taken my leg. But it had severed the last thread between us. He'd always thought he held all the power in this marriage. He thought no matter how far he crossed the line, I'd always be there waiting. He thought the title of Mrs. Thorne was a chain I'd never break. But in that moment, he understood. He was the one who couldn't let go. I'd been the backbone holding up his whole world. Pull out the backbone, and the whole thing collapses, never to be put back together. And I was already long gone. I didn't even care to glance back at the ruins. A year later, Nia Moore had vanished completely from the entertainment industry. Sophia tossed a gossip magazine down in front of me. The headline blared, "Career in ruins. Nia Moore exposed. Scandalous personal life. Charity fraud. Fake degree blacklisted industry-wide." Liam did this. Sophia sipped her coffee. Word is Nia found out she was pregnant 3 months ago and threw a fit, demanding to be his wife. The Thornes just handed her a plane ticket to the States and hush money. I flipped through the pages. The photos showed a gaunt, hollow-eyed Nia, nothing like the girl who'd strutted around in my old shirt, rubbing it in my face. She turned down the money, showed up at Thorne Corp screaming and causing a scene. Sophia lowered her voice. "They say she miscarried right there. Blood all over the marble floors. Liam had security drag her out. Never even came down to see." The magazine said she'd had a breakdown after the surgery, posting wild accusations on social media only to get sued for defamation when she couldn't back them up. Every brand dropped her. All her shows had her face replaced with CGI. Even her film school revoked her Distinguished Alumna Award. Gone. Erased. Like she'd never existed. Liam's N.O.T. doing much better. Sophia flipped to the business section. The headline was even bigger. Thorne Corp swamped in debt. Chase and Hart families pull all funding. After he stormed the Chase estate and wrecked the place, Elijah bought out 3 of Thorne's core supply chains. And your brother. Even worse. He pulled the entire Southside Project tech team, Thorne's only profitable venture this year. She chuckled. Everyone in the industry says the Thornes are 1 court order away from bankruptcy. I closed the magazine and looked out the window. The sky over Riverton was still blue, the clouds still white. Liam probably thought he'd only lost a marriage. He had no idea that the second he chose to cheat, he'd hit the countdown button on his family's downfall. The Chase's revenge. The Hart's clean break. They were just a soft breath against a building already hollowed out from the inside. After all, in this world of wealth and status, those who break trust end up with nothing. Hey there, could you rate this story in the comments? Use a scale of 1 to 10. Please, I am begging you. It really means a lot to me. And if you like this kind of content, don't forget to hit follow.